Most of the people that you hear about having a spiritual awakening that are in the position of being a teacher, it came from some real dedicated practice, a direct pursuit of enlightenment. But then every once in a while you hear a story of somebody out of nowhere just leaping into a state of heightened awareness and spiritual awakening. A great example of this is a book called Collision with the Infinite. It talks about the author, who's sadly no longer with us. It talks about her spiritual awakening that happened completely out of nowhere one day, and the issues that caused. Because it does cause issues to awaken, and that's one thing that I always want to reiterate, is that there are risks of spiritual work. Sometimes you have an awakening that you're not quite ready for, and it causes what I've heard called a spiritual crisis. Can you awaken by complete accident? I think it is possible. But I think having the expectation that your awakening is going to happen spontaneously is a little bit like expecting that you're going to win the lottery. Like, I bought a lottery ticket so I don't have to worry about my rent coming up that I don't have the money for yet, because the lottery winner will be announced and it will be me, and then I'll be able to pay it, and You have to have a level of spiritual security, the same way you have to have a nice comfy nest egg for the worst things that could happen. I don't know, it's not a perfect analogy because spiritual awakening is not currency, but if you want to have those magical awakenings, or if you see a spiritual leader and you think, I want what you have, well, you got to start putting in some work. And there is no perfect how-to guide for how to awaken. It's also funny the context of asking the question, can you awaken by accident? Because in one way, there is no accident. In the great way of things, the Tao, everything is absolutely purposeful, even if its purpose is just for everything to be exactly the way that it is at any given time. And for my own emotional well-being, I have really adopted this view of everything being for a purpose. But on the other end of things, everything is by accident. Everything is by complete happenstance. Even those spiritual leaders, they put in 10, 20 years of doing nothing but meditating in a cave, some of them, and they had their awakening. Okay, but where did the initial impulse come from to do that in the first place? Did that really come from them? Do we control the natural impulses that we have? I don't think so. I think the impulse that arises to get somebody to pursue a spiritual path that eventually gives them an awakening is that's just how it goes, as the weather. Did I decide that it was going to be a windy day today? No. Did I decide that any random idea was going to pop into my head? No. We do have some level of control over things relatively. But the impulse to act on anything, we don't have control over. We don't have control over the initial spiritual spark. So everything is a complete accident, in some regard. It's just a spectrum of stuff being viewed as more random or less random. More within my control or less within my control. What spiritual awakening is just reality wanting to become more aware of itself. I can't take personal credit for any awakening I have had or have failed to have up until this point. It is all just a bit of happenstance. But I would like to learn more and more and more about my true nature up until the day that I die. And so the classic saying, I can't control the direction of the wind, I can't exactly control exactly when awakenings are going to happen, but I can adjust my sails to make sure that I reach that place. I can make sure that I'm doing some kind of spiritual practice every single day. So yeah, spiritual awakening can happen by complete accident, but if you're even asking this question, I wouldn't even consider your awakening an accident because you had some spiritual impulse in the first place.